Hey guys, Barndoorr here, back with another RBG video. Today, a little bit different. I'm actually just want to talk about the current state of WoW RBGs. It's kind of been in a weird spot recently, and I think there's some information out there that a lot of people might not know. There's some information out there that a lot of people might be able to capitalize on right now. So before I get into that, let's go ahead and pull this up here. Hey, okay. So here's the ladder, right? You guys see it on the screen. We've got some of the top end. We're looking at the top 10. We're looking all 28, 2,700. Now this is going to be maybe the same 10, 15 players that all play together, and then underneath it's going to be some alts and whatnot. But we can talk about the rating, and we can talk about where MMR is right now and what's going on. But first, I actually want to pull something up, kind of make a graph here and see if I can show you guys. So I'm going to pull this up right here so you guys can see. Can I make this bigger? Okay. Anyways, so let me show you guys. We're going to divide this up into... Sorry, my paint skills are bad here. We're going to divide this up into 4 parts, right? Right now, I believe we're kind of in the 3rd part, and this is a season as far as RBGs go. Obviously, when and to preface things, to put it into context here, what I'm talking about is kind of the way MMR and the way rating gains fluctuate during an RBG season. And we can talk about the meta, and we can talk about what classes are good here in a little bit. But first I want to start by talking about just participation. Because one thing with RBGs is there's times when, such as Shadowlands Season 1, when RBGs first came out, participation was just through the roof. There was more people playing RBGs than I've literally ever seen before, ever. And on the flip side of that coin, towards the end of the Season 1, there were less people playing RBGs than I've ever seen playing, right? So there was 2 extremes, right? So if we look at the start of Season 1, and again, I mean, I know it's a long season, but I know I've seen some things that estimate this season might be ending around March. So I would say we are probably around this time frame, right? This is where we are as far as the time frame, and this is the start of the first quarter of the season, second quarter of the season, third quarter of the season, fourth quarter of the season. Can I drag this? Hey, look at that. Okay. Look at that. Okay, so now I fucked this all up. Okay, so I think we're right around here. This is where we are right now, right? This is the start of the season on the very left. On the right, this is the end of the season. So everybody knows the start of the season, the first couple weeks, definitely participation is way up. Way up. Now, I'm not going to go all the way up because I think all the way up here would be like Shadowlands Season 1, and we're definitely not up there right now. So it kind of goes up for the first couple weeks. And then even in the first start of it, I think it kind of levels off until kind of the second quarter. The second quarter, we saw a significant drop, right? And so right here, this is 0. And right here, I'd say we're looking at about 2,600 MMR. And what am I talking about? This is kind of the peak, right? What we're talking about, the player participation and kind of the MMR peak where everything is scaled off of, because for those who don't know, like RBGs are the MMR that you play with, from season to season, it's very different. And it's going to vary depending on what the top players are playing at. If the top 3 to 4 teams are playing at 3 to 4 to 10 teams are all playing at 2,600, then typically you're going to have other teams that are, there's going to be gaps, right? There's going to be teams that are at 2,300 that maybe not able to break into that top team territory. And then you're going to have teams that are maybe in the higher 21s, maybe the lower 22s, 2,200, and those are going to be people who are maybe capable of getting 2,400 with the right team. But they just, for whatever reason, they're not able to get on some of those teams, or they're just having trouble, or they're just playing casually, but they are good players. And then you've got, we could go all the way back down, but so if we're looking at, say, corrupted season, or we're looking at season 1, this peak for the first start would have been 3K. And remember, everything is scaled off of the start, right? Or off of like the higher teams. So at the start of season 1, this number was like 3K within the first like couple weeks, right? If you guys remember, there was a couple teams that were at 3K, like 2,900 MMR in the first season in the first couple weeks. And because of that, lower and lower teams that would say maybe this season be 2,200, they were 2,200, right? So just keep that in mind, that season to season, if you're a 2,500 player in season 1, you may not be a 2,500 player in season 2. It's all relative based on the season and where the bracket and where MMR is at. So we're right here on 2,600, about where the higher teams are. And then this is still 2,600, but this is still kind of like where the top end teams, and people aren't really losing MMR. Like there's still people fighting at 2,600 even here, but this is a line for participation, right? And so what I'm seeing is participation is in the second quarter really dropped super low, where I did not see a lot of teams playing at all. Now, there was some jumps here. I would say there's some jumps. I mean, one of these could be the Method tournament, RBG tournament. There was a lot of players playing then. There's a lot of players playing for the G Fuel RBG tournament. Now, in different weeks, it spikes up and it down. But for a long time, this is where I would say the majority of players were fighting at 2,400. The highest teams that I ever saw queuing around this time, even some of the people who were at 2,600, like CR, they would be on their alts and they'd all be playing around like 2,400, right? So again, everything is relative. Say at the start of the season, you were fighting at 2,100 and now you're having trouble breaking 2K. Well, it's all relative based on where the top people are, how MMR is inflating, or in this case, everybody thinks MMR inflates as the season goes, but for RBGs, for arenas, that is true. But for RBGs, it's really weird because as participation drops, MMR actually deflates in certain ways. And now there are, different things. Like you can still grow and you can still somebody can make an alt and somebody can get a team that just farms the bracket, right? And that happens where there's not a lot of teams queuing, and maybe you get on a team where you're the best team queuing for that entire day. Yeah, you're going to go 15, 16, 30 and 0, and you're going to go up in CR, you're going to go up in MMR, and you may be at 2,500, but that's not everybody, right? That's going to be the top team for that moment. And then what happens during these like lulls where the top teams are around 2,400 is you will have maybe 1, 2, 3, even 4 teams that are kind of at the top that will necessarily not queue into each other, and they will kind of take turns. And I don't mean like they're not going to like, hey, it's my turn. No, it's now it's my turn. Oh, it's 5 o'clock. Now it's his turn. No, like not coordinated whatsoever, but you will have the top teams that will kind of take turns in different time slots where they will run the bracket. And then this other team, it's late night now. Another team, say Ames team, right? That's a popular leader who leads late at night. It's late at night and he'll start queuing and he'll run the bracket. and he'll win every game. He goes, that team will win every game they go up against until maybe early in the morning, and they choose to get off, and then somebody else will make a group, and they will be the highest team on the bracket, and they will win every game. And so it's a weird meta, but that I noticed that usually only happens when things are deflated, when participation is really deflated. But so we're about right here, right? One trend that I've been noticing recently is I have seen participation jumping up. I wouldn't say it's at the start it was at like the peak of the season, but I have seen participation slowly coming up. And what's weird is we were at 26, people were at 2,600, people were at 2,400. And if we check out the bracket right here, right, you see some 2,800s, you see some 2,700s, and you see a lot of people. Now, we can even check out, this is Arena Mate, right? This is some of the player tracking, and you see all of these top people from 20 at the bottom here, 2,500 all the way up to 2,800. There's a lot. All of these players, no one's going down in CR, right? They're playing a couple games, and you see all these green numbers right here, right? These are all people queuing, right? And then, for example, here's one person right here who they queued 6 games. They went 5-1, and they went down -1 or -6 CR. Okay, so there's an anomaly. But you see everybody who's queuing at the top end right now, and we can even scroll down, and this is true. You've got 1 or 2 anomalies right here, but everybody who's queuing right now is gaining CR like crazy. We go to page 4, right, and we're looking at like 2,300 now. This is a little bit more balanced because you see some more people losing, but I see mostly everybody right in here, and then mostly everybody who's queuing up is gaining CR. So what is happening? Let me pull up okay. What is happening right here is 2,600 to even 2,800. I'm not 100% familiar with what like that top team, like the top couple teams that are at 27 and 2,800 MMR or 2,800 CR. I don't know what their MMR is. Their MMR may be 2,600. That's why I'm putting a question mark next to 28, because I don't know what MMR they're queuing at, because I'm not part of that team. But what I'm seeing is now participation is starting to go back up, because and I don't know if that's a response to MMR being inflated, or if that's a response to if MMR being inflated is a, how do I put this? I don't know if people are queuing because MMR is getting inflated, or MMR is getting inflated because people are queuing. So right now, where this will go for the rest of the season, and right here, this is where kind of we are at in this vague area, because again, we don't know when the season's going to end, but we do have kind of a rough estimate. It's going to end in maybe about 2 months. I could be wrong. They could extend it. It could go on for forever. I don't know. But what I see right now, and if I'm out there, if I'm somebody who's kind of not been queuing, who's been maybe kind of sitting and waiting until, this drought in MMR and this drought in player participation is done, it's now, right? So let's go back. Let's check out some of these, right? And so this is like the tracking right here. Cam Dog, I'm going to show you guys. This was the top player. This was the number 1 spot, 2689 for months. For probably a couple, at least 2-3 months, he was like the number 1. Now it would fluctuate, because he stopped queuing. What happened was, I don't know. I don't talk to him personally. I don't know exactly. Cam Dog is not on my friends list. Not somebody that I talked to in the past year. But he got his CR and he sat it. Stopped queuing. Played alts, just I'm not saying he stopped queuing. I'm saying maybe he's played his alt or whatever, or he played classic or played something. I don't know. All I know is this Boomy was the Boomy that was number one for a good amount of time, and like months. And usually people who sit like on the number one spot, they will just play an alt, and other people will not be able to reach that CR because the MMR is deflated and they can't like run over, or they can't overcome that gap. But what's been happening is this team and a lot of other people are starting 2700, 2800, 2834, and then not just that, right? You've got people who are down, and this has a lot to do with alts, but you've got other teams all the way here at 50. We've got 51 people above 2600 right now. Now, like very, very short time ago, there was 2 people above 2600, or there was 10 people above 2600, and then all of a sudden it just exploded with 50 people over 2600. And player activity, if you look, all of these players are playing in the past couple hours, the past day, right? And so right now MMR is starting to jump. So if you're somebody who's out there waiting, kind of sitting like, I'm debating whether I come back. I don't know if it's a lull. It's kind of a drought. It's not a drought for RBGs, because right now everything is starting to get inflated. Now, we talked about MMR getting inflated, and we talked about player activities increasing in RBGs. Let's move on to another topic, which is kind of the meta. Let's talk about the meta. And one thing, if you didn't know, you've been living under a rock. For all of Shadowlands, Druid, Boomy specifically, if you look at spec this is probably better, spec representation, Boomy has been the meta. If you don't have at least 1-2 Boomies on your team, you're having a bad time. You're not able to queue at a high end. So let me kind of break it down a little bit of what we're seeing here. So you're seeing this Boomy because every team needs a Boomy, and every team needs a Guardian Druid for their flag carrier. I've not seen a team above 2200 that uses anything other than a Guardian Druid as their flag carrier this season, that is. So and that Guardian Druid should also be able to play Boomy, so that's why you're seeing the most highly represented spec right now, and the most highly represented class is going to be a Boomy, because you have the Boomies that play Boomy, and then you have the Boomies that play Boomy and Guardian, and you need them on every team. At least 1, 2, 3, right? There are some teams out there that are running 4 Boomies. I've seen it. I've queued into it like yesterday. 4 Boomies. It happens. And so why is this one of the most highly represented specs? I mean, balancing issues. They're able to stealth. They're able, especially as Guardian Druid, this is what makes it one of the best things. It's able to stealth. They're so tanky. The different legendaries, you can choose between Convoke. You can choose between Kyrian, which is good damage as well, and it can't be stopped like Convoke it can. You can choose Necro to be a Live Lord. There's so many different options. Boomy is by far the RBG spec right now. Now, you see Priest up here, 16%. Right? Why is this the second most represented class? And it's a Disc Priest. Well, right now, the top end teams I'm seeing are running 2 Disc Priests and a Mistweaver. 2 Disc Priests and a Mistweaver. 2 Disc Priests and an H-Val. 2 Disc Priests and an H-Priest. Or 2 Disc Priests and a Resto Druid in certain cases. Disc Priests are the king of RBG heals right now. Dome is an incredible cooldown. And if you are not utilizing a double Dome, and you're not utilizing Disc Priests on your heals, on your heal roster, you should strongly consider finding a Disc Priest, because, look no further than the tournaments. The Method tournaments, the G Fuel tournaments. Every team is running double Disc Priests. There's a reason why. Now, going down here, Rogue, I honestly think Rogue should be higher represented on this list, but I know why Rogue is only at like the 12%. I feel like Rogue should be up here, right alongside Disc Priest. But the reason it's not is probably because most of these teams are running double Disc Priests and one Rogue. Now, one reason Rogue might not be run is because right now there is a severe lack of good rogues. Now, not saying there's not good rogues out there, and all the top teams, they have their go-to rogues that they will invite, their go-to rogues that they will always get on their team. But every time I do my viewer RBGs, or I do any sort of push group, or any Posse Vibers do any sort of push group or RBGs, rogues are always the hardest thing to find right now, and I think it has to do with maybe rogues not being in their best spot they've ever been in as far as survivability. And I mean, there's probably other reasons, but rogues just not being in the best spot right now for them personally is maybe another reason why. Because I'm having to press Q without having a rogue in my group, not because I don't want a rogue, because I can't find a rogue. That's the thing. Now, I'm actually a little bit surprised here by seeing Demon Hunter right underneath it. But one of the meta specs that I have seen is running one Demon Hunter on your team that is going to, on flag maps, they use that spectral sight to take out the flag carrier. Also, they're amazing for offensive pushes, and they're great floaters, right? They are not as... They basically do fulfill the role that like a Boomy would fulfill, although not as well. And especially now with the rise in Necro DHs, which, I may or may not have called that Necro DHs were going to be a big thing in the end of this season. And people didn't believe me, but I made the guide for a reason. Hope you guys, if anybody watched it, hope you enjoyed it. But anyways, Necro DHs have been on the rise, and Necro DHs have been getting more and more popular every day. And so I think that's another reason we're seeing a DH just right underneath Rogue here. And then we start seeing a hodgepodge of specs. You see DK a little bit. You see Holy Pally. You see Holy Priest, Shadow Priest as well. You're seeing Rets in here. I see a lot of teams that are running one Warrior and one Ret. I see a lot of teams that are running double Rets. So as far as the representation, right, that's the spec representation. And like as far as like the classes, we see a lot of, so it's funny, you see more, as far as spec representation, you see more Havoc than you see Rets and Death Knights in any other class. But as far as class representation, you're seeing much, much more Paladins than you're seeing Demon Hunters, which is, it kind of swaps back and forth. But, so I think it's evident when you take a look at the top of the ladder, you see the main thing that I see is some Demon Hunters, a lot of Priest, a lot of Boomies, a lot of Priest, a lot of Boomies, a lot of Boomies, a lot of Boomies. So going back to our grid here, we are right here. As far as the current state of RBGs, guys, as far as this season goes, I'm very hopeful, and I think we're coming out of a lull in player activity, and we're coming up on a big spurt in MMR growth and player activity growth. So if you're out there and you're considering queuing up for RBGs, I would say now is the time, because there are people who are used to being 2K, 2100, maybe even 1800 or 1600 Andes that are queuing it up, and they're able to climb in rating right now like they never were able to maybe a few weeks ago. So guys, that's going to be it for this video. Make sure to drop a like, maybe hit me up in the comment section, maybe hit him with that subscribe button. I don't know, maybe click on that little bell or whatever you want to call it. Have a good one.